In this lab, we'll take a look at the foramen of the skull. Now, I divided the foramen into different sections. Foramen is a singular word, and then foramina is multiple. So what we're going to do is we're going to look at the foramina from the inside of the cranium. What we have here is the cranial floor. You want to hold it so that the nasal bones are this way, and then the occiput is down over here. And we're going to work our way from posterior to anterior. The first hole that you should locate very easily is known as the foramen magnum, right? So this big hole right here, foramen magnum, is for the spinal cord we're going to see, and then next semester in A&P2 you'll see the vertebral arteries pass through here. Then jump off to the side a little bit. You're going to see two kidney bean foramen right here, and then over here. These are the jugular foramen. Right, this is where our jugular vein goes. It's actually called the internal jugular vein, passes through there. In between the jugular foramen and the foramen magnum, this little hole right in between, this is called the hypoglossal canal. Right, so you'll see the two hypoglossal canals. That holds the 12th cranial nerve. We'll see it's called the hypoglossal nerve down the road. So foramen magnum, jugular foramen, hypoglossal canal. This triangular portion right here is called the petrous portion of the temporal bone. Our inner ear workings are all inside here. So there's a hole going to the inner ear. This is known as the internal acoustic meatus. Sometimes people call it the internal auditory meatus. Go to the tip of the petrous portion right here, and there's a hole right in front, right above my cursor there. That is called the foramen lacerum. Foramen lacerum. The internal carotid artery actually goes over that hole. In the greater wing of the sphenoid, there's three holes. Over here is the foramen rotundum, foramen ovale, foramen spinosum. Okay, so kind of like R-O-S, like that. Foramen rotundum, ovale means that the shape is oval, and then spinosum. All right, so notice those three are all in the greater wing. Then finally, from this view, in the cribriform plate, all these little dots represent small holes that lead to the nasal cavity below. Those are called the olfactory foramen. So on the next slide, I have everything labeled. Again, foramen magnum, jump over to the jugulars, back in between the hypoglossal. In the petrous portion right here, internal acoustic meatus, or the internal auditory meatus. Right in front of the point right here is the foramen lacerum, and then the three in the greater wing, R-O-S, rotundum, ovale, spinosum, and then in the cribriform plate right here are the olfactory foramen, right? The first cranial nerve, the olfactory nerves pass through there. The next group I did was the foramen around the eye. So in the supraorbital margin is the supraorbital foramen. Now, the next two here and here, these are not round holes. They're more slit-like openings. A slit-like opening is known as a fissure. So right here is a fissure. This is the superior orbital fissure. Below it is the inferior orbital fissure. And then just medial to the superior orbital fissure, you're going to see a hole. It's kind of tucked up in the back corner. This is called the optic canal. Optic canal. Then draining the tears. We don't see it very well on this image right here. We see a little bit here. There's a hole that goes down to the nasal cavity. This is known as the nasolacrimal canal. And then finally on this view, the infraorbital foramen. Okay, so if you kind of go from above, supraorbital foramen, superior orbital fissure, just medial is the optic canal, infraorbital fissure, Right? The nasolacrimal canal would be in this corner here. It's a duct, it's a tube that brings the tears down over here. So that would be called the nasolacrimal canal. And then finally the infraorbital foramen right over here. On the underside of the cranium, we have three foramen. The first one is right behind our front two teeth. This is known as the incisive foramen. The next one you want to find is between the styloid process, the point, and the mastoid process, the big bump behind our ear. They call it the stylo-mastoid foramen. That's a tiny little pinpoint hole. From that point, jump over the styloid process this way, and you'll see a canal called the carotid canal. And if you tried to put like a stick in there, it would not go through. If you inadvertently went into this foramen here, that would be the jugular foramen from the underside. So the carotid canal, you won't be able to put a stick through. The foramen on the side of the skull is where we would put a Q-tip. This is called the external acoustic meatus or the external auditory meatus. Right, that leads into the inner ear. Right, so those are our foramen of the skull.